Hi, and welcome to episode number 104 of the Living While Loving Your Child Through Addiction podcast, formerly known as Living with Your Child's Addiction. Here, we are focused on self care as we tend to our own lives while also extending love and compassion to our kids. This podcast offers science backed skills to bring hope and healing to your entire family. If you're listening to this episode, chances are you're having a really hard day. And I want to acknowledge that right from the start. That's why this is a short episode. Nobody has the bandwidth to listen to a lot of information when they can't stop crying. I know that feeling of not being able to stop crying, and I want to offer some gentle guidance for how to give yourself grace, honor where you are, and move through it. It might feel like this pain will never end, but I want to remind you that it won't always feel this bad. The intensity of the pain that you're experiencing right now will soften over time. You will learn to live with what you're going through, and you will develop ways to handle the emotions that feel so overwhelming today. Healing and growth happen gradually. And with each difficult day, we build our resilience muscles. Trust that even though it feels heavy now, you will not always be in this place of hurting so much. This pain will either dissipate or you will get better at carrying it. Let's start with what is going on inside of you when you can't stop crying. I want to walk through some tools for becoming more aware of what you're feeling and how to honor those emotions rather than pushing them away. So, I'm going to start by talking about three things: self awareness, honoring your feelings, and sitting with discomfort. The first thing is that when you're feeling overwhelmed by emotion, is to tune into self awareness. Often, when we spiral into intense feelings, we don't fully understand what is triggering them because when emotion emotions are high, thinking and reasoning is low. So take a moment to ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What thoughts are going through my mind? It might help to write those down or even just to say them out loud. Bringing awareness to your thoughts and feelings gives you a starting point, allowing you to understand what is underneath those tears. Asking yourself questions gets you out of that fight or flight autopilot part of your brain and into the thinking and reasoning part of your brain. It disrupts the behavior pattern or the thought loop that you're in when you ask yourself questions. The second thing is once you've identified what you're thinking and feeling, it is important to honor those emotions. A lot of times we start judging ourselves for having emotions, especially when they're strong or overwhelming. And we think things like, I shouldn't be crying or I need to pull myself together. But the truth is, feelings are not right or wrong. They aren't good or bad. They just are. It's okay to cry. Crying is a natural release, and it is okay to experience that without trying to push it away. And I think this is fascinating. There are three types of tears, and each type has a purpose. There are basal tears for regular eye lubrication. There are reflex tears that are a reflex to irritants like smoke or onions. And there's emotional tears that are produced in response to strong emotions. And emotional tears have several important purposes. They help reduce stress because they contain stress related hormones like cortisol and adrenaline and toxins. So, those things are being flushed out of your body through your tears when you cry. They also trigger the release of endorphins, which can help to calm you down. They relieve pain. And that is why, after we have a good cry, we feel that sense of relief. So, crying plays a part in both physical and emotional regulation. Crying is not bad, it has a purpose. The third thing is that, along with honoring those feelings that are producing the tears, is the willingness to just be with that discomfort. And this can be hard, especially when it feels like that sadness or overwhelm might not ever end, that feeling like you're always going to feel this way. But remember what I said in the beginning, that you will either learn how to carry this emotion, or whatever is causing it right now will be worked out. But when we allow ourselves to stay with our emotions instead of avoiding or suppressing them, we create space for healing. So just allow yourself to experience that discomfort with curiosity. You can try asking yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? The willingness to feel is often the key to moving through these tough situations. Every emotion has a message associated with it, just like the lights on the dash of your car that tell you that something is wrong with your car. You get curious about what that light is trying to tell you. And it's the same thing with emotions, they have a message. So think about sadness. Sadness means I have lost someone or something important to me. That is the message. The Invitation to Change program refers to loving someone and being sad when that person is struggling is two sides of the same coin. One side of the coin is your love, the other side of the coin is your hurt. And you hurt because you love deeply. And we can honor the gift of loving deeply by being willing to be with the sadness or whatever the emotion is that comes with loving so deeply. When you're caught in deep emotional pain, it is really easy to get lost in the past or the future, and part of willingness is staying in the present moment. You don't want to be replaying something that hurt you, or in the future worrying about all the things that can go wrong. The best way to move through this is to stay present, you grounding yourself in the here and now. And groundingness is a mindfulness technique that is just bringing your attention to the present moment by connecting to your body and what's going on around you. So, to ground yourself, you focus on the physical sensations that you're feeling in your body, like your breath, or the feeling of your feet on the ground, or the texture of an object that you're touching. This helps you pull your attention away from the overwhelming thoughts and emotions and back to the present moment. I think it's also helpful to remind yourself when you're doing that, that right now in this moment, you are safe. So that grounding yourself and creating that sense of safety can help you to feel more centered and calm and in control. Now, being grounded is not going to make your pain disappear, but the most peace is always available in the present moment. So, everything that I just talked about is based on internal awareness. So, when you're having a really bad day and you can't stop crying and everything's feeling out of control, the first thing you do is create that internal awareness, those steps that I just shared with you. Now I'm going to transition to some external things that you can do. Here are 4 practical tips for managing these types of days with compassion. Number 1 is lower your expectations of yourself. On really hard days, it's important to recognize that you won't be capable of the maximum output. It is okay if today is a day that you are not going to get everything done. Be gentle with yourself and accept that your best today probably isn't going to look the same than your best isn't going to look the same as your best would look on other days when you're feeling better. And that's what I am actually doing by working on this podcast. I had other expectations for myself today, but as I am trying to get back in the groove of everyday life after Hurricane Milton, I have allowed myself to do what feels good to me today, and working on this podcast feels easy. So I have released the expectation that I would work on those other things, and because they felt really hard. And so I'm working on this podcast right now because that feels good to me. Number 2 is take breaks. Give yourself permission to rest, whether it's taking a nap or stepping outside for fresh air or just sitting quietly. Those breaks can help you recharge even on these really tough days, that sometimes you just feel like staring at the wall. That's all you have the emotional capacity for. And for me, stepping outside seems like such a small thing, but it can completely change how I feel. I can be working in my RV office and feel like I'm just going to, start falling into a funk. And I go outside and I feel completely different. Or earlier today, I went and sat outside. It's beautiful here. It's only 71 degrees. I went and sat outside and worked for a little while. Just sitting outside makes me feel so much better. Number 3 is nurturing your body. For some reason, when we're not feeling great, that physical care is the first thing that we let go. So just remember to try to eat nourishing foods, to drink water, and if you can, to move your body, even if it's just stretching or taking a really short walk, just any movement. I like to stretch while I'm walking, right? So I can get both things done at once. Or I stretch while I'm blow drying my hair because I have to have something to do because it takes so long to dry my hair every day. So I stretch during that time. And other times when I'm feeling really depleted, I do what I call lazy stretches, which is like I'll just stretch in my bed. I don't know if you've ever heard of bed yoga before, but it's actually a thing. You can look it up and see stretches that you can do in your bed. But that's just me meeting myself where I'm at and still continuing to nurture my body with the ability that I have on that day. Number 4 is self compassion and grace. We always need self compassion, especially on days like this. Like you're just doing the best you can. And it is okay if you don't feel productive or if you don't feel like you're handling things the way you think you should. Give yourself grace. Crying does not mean that you are weak. Remember, it has a purpose. Feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean that you're failing. Sometimes emotions are overwhelming. So give yourself grace for being human, for having emotions, and for needing time to process them. Give yourself the patience that you would give to a toddler and practice that kind inner voice that you would have for that toddler as well. And finally, it's also important to recognize that everybody copes differently. Maybe my ideas don't sound good to you, but maybe while you were listening to this episode, you thought of some things that you would find helpful. Write those things down so that you can refer to them when you are having one of these kinds of days. You aren't necessarily in the best position to think of it during that time. So, having these things written down is helpful, or just having them as habits. These things are all habits for me. But the key is just figuring out what feels right to you, because what feels right to you is what you're most likely to do. And that's what matters. So, to wrap it up, remember that these hard days are just a part of life, but they do not define you. You can't always control your circumstances or these things that make you feel like you can't stop crying, but you can control how you treat yourself on these hard days. Practice self awareness, honor your feelings, and just be willing to sit with that discomfort. It's okay. Be present with it. Be kind to yourself and recognize that some days are just about getting through the day, and that is perfectly okay. If today is one of those days, just know that I am sending you love. I am with you in spirit, and I hope that this episode offers you some comfort and support. Before we wrap up, I just want to say a huge thank you to Mom from Illinois, because she left me a lovely podcast review, and it totally means the world to me because reviews help other parents find the podcast when they need it most. So, if you haven't left a review yet, please take a moment to leave one. And also, don't forget to check the show notes, because there's information in there about the in person retreat that's happening in Florida in February, my free guide on enabling, or you can sign up for a road to recovery call there. And I just want to share that the parents that I work with are always well educated and full of information. They just need help sorting through it, implementing what they've learned, and sharpening those skills. So, if that sounds like you, I would love to support you on this journey. Thank you for listening today. Until next time, please be gentle with yourself.